Oh, we're live.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Sarah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Bridge, a monthly webinar series hosted by the Masters of Educational Technology program here at Michigan State University. My name is Spencer Greenhall, and I'm an instructor for MAET. I will be hosting today's webinar with the help of Sarah Keenan, one of my colleagues in MSU's Educational Psychology and Educational Technology PhD program. Our goal with the Bridge series of webinars is to provide free, high-quality professional development that is focused on teacher practice. And we're actually taking sort of a meta approach with this webinar. Over the past 2 years, the MAET program has been using webinars as a way to provide this professional development and outreach to enrollees, graduates, and anyone else who's interested in education and educational technology. But recently, we've been discussing whether webinars are the most effective way for us to provide this support and outreach. And as a result, over the summer and during the next school year, MAET will be exploring new ways of providing this outreach. So we'd like to take advantage of our last webinar for this school year to make our discussions about this public and to get some input from MAET stakeholders. The MAET Bridge has traditionally involved MAET instructors, grad students at MSU, and teachers who have enrolled in or graduated from the MAET program. So it should come as no surprise that we've chosen people from each of these three groups as we talk about where we're going with the future of MAET Bridge. I'd like to briefly introduce each of our three guests and then give them a chance to add anything that I've missed. Before I do that, though, if you're watching us live, don't forget that you can ask questions or make comments via Twitter using the hashtag MAETBridge or by contributing to the embedded Titan pad at bridge.educ.msu.edu. So our first guest is Mary Weaver. And in addition to directing and teaching the graduate certificate courses for MAET, Mary is a board member for McCall and a teacher consultant for the Red Cedar Writing Project. Before her transition to MSU, Mary spent 8 years teaching 2nd through 4th grades in Michigan and Texas. Her interests include classroom design, movement in the classroom, and of course, effective and creative uses of technology to assist teaching and learning. Mary is a proud MAET graduate and loves to connect and share at teaching conferences all over the US. To find out more and connect on social media, please visit about.me/Mary Weaver. Thank you very much for joining us, Mary. How are you doing tonight?
Great, thanks for having me.
Good. So our second guest, Amanda McCarthy, is a recent graduate of the MAET program. She currently works as an elementary technology coach and media coordinator for a school district in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. She is passionate about design thinking via making and utilizing PLNs for continuing education and connectedness. And she enjoys anything that gets her outdoors, including gardening and kayaking. And you can connect with her via Twitter. Her handle is TeacherAM. And Amanda, I have to admit, the first few times that I interacted with you on Twitter, I kept thinking AM as in morning. And it took me a while, and I've known you for a while, it took me a while to realize that AM are your initials, so this is an apology from me. But thank you so much for being a part of the webinar with us.
And thanks for having me. And AM, multiple meetings.
Multiple
I
meetings,
get up very early to teach.
Okay, good, good. All right. Then, last but not least, we have Ming Lei, who is a student in the MSU's Educational Psychology and Educational Technology PhD program, where he conducts research on how social networking sites can help college students develop intercultural sensitivity. He also does research on how robotic telepresence, a subject of one of our previous webinars, can help improve the quality of peer-to-peer and student-to-instructor interactions. Ming has taught and developed project-based curriculum for blended middle and high schools, and he currently still teaches high school math and meets daily with 6 high school students whom he mentors. So Ming, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Good. Especially good because we're only a few minutes into the webinar and I'm already talking too much. So it's time to get to the good part and let the rest of you speak. And Ming, I'd actually like to start by asking you a question. So Mary and I, in the past, have talked a lot about the bridge part of MAET Bridge, specifically bridging the worlds of educational research and educational practice. You're currently a PhD student and a budding researcher, but you're also continuing your own teaching practice. What do you think about the label teacher practitioner, researcher practitioner?
In the past, I used to think of researcher and practitioners being two ends of a dichotomy. Some researchers in a laboratory, somewhere in a controlled environment, where studying theories and trying to just study how people learn and how people teach. And then in somewhere else, in a far off land, there's some teachers working with students and doing real teaching. But after a year here at Michigan State, I think those two go hand in hand, whether or not uh, researchers and practitioners are always aware of it. And I also think it's very possible to be both. And that's something I found to be a strength with MSU's EPET program. I've been able to learn about theories and then also look at how those theories have direct implications into the classroom. For example, in the past, any decisions I made as a teacher were mostly based on anecdotal experience. If I found that a certain teaching strategy worked for my students, I would try that. But I didn't focus a lot on why that might work, why that worked. Mostly I just focused on the outcome. But now that I look at things from a researcher perspective, I focus a lot more on the why and the how rather than just the what.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing some of that. Now, Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point. So Ming is talking about his journey at bringing research and practice together, but do you feel like generally there's a sort of disconnect between these two worlds?
I feel like there is a disconnect in some ways, but I don't think it's an intentional disconnect, because when you talk to teachers, they definitely are looking at research and want to know research, and when you talk to researchers, they are very interested in what our teachers are doing. From being in the classroom last year and now being at Michigan State, I am realizing that the teaching world is a little harder to break into if you were never part of it yourself. And so teachers don't think that they're, I don't even think teachers realize, because I didn't realize that you're in a group, and when there's another teacher and you meet that teacher, you automatically have a bond. And especially if you're an elementary teacher and meet another elementary teacher, and high school. But I don't think that teachers at the different grade levels think they do the same things sometimes. So I found that to be really interesting, and I think too, like, being at Michigan State now within a research world, but these researchers are also teaching courses to adults. I think that they definitely, the two worlds need to be closer. It's hard when you are researching something and you're focusing so much in one area. The whole picture, you just can't focus on the whole picture. And we find that in a lot of careers too. It's not just teaching.
Right.
Yeah, I found that interesting, switching from the K-12 world to the post-secondary, for sure.
And so, Ming and Mary, I'd like to ask you both a question. Amanda, feel free to pipe in as well. But one thing that you've both talked about is sort of a transition that you've gone through. You came to MSU at about the same time, so you entered a more research-focused context at about the same time. I'm wondering how, coming to MSU, coming to this more research-heavy environment, how has that changed the way that you look at teaching? Do you see yourself as being able to navigate both worlds now? Do you have any sort of insights as to, looking back and looking forward, how your perspective has changed at this gap?
Let's see. I think, actually, come back to me. I had a thought, but I need to restructure.
I'm very much trying to stay in both worlds at this point. I'm still in a lot of teaching fellowships, the McCall board, things like that. I think one of the reasons I was hired for this job is because I was a teacher and because I have connections to the teaching world, and so obviously MAET sees that as a very valuable asset to, most of our students are K-12 teachers, so it's great to have somebody in the know of what is happening in the teaching world right now, the struggles teachers are having to go through, the good things that are happening in the teaching world too, and yeah, I'm trying to answer your question, and now I'm
But
just.
you know what, Mary? I think that does bring up a very good point because, as Ming said, um, his transformation came when he connected that he was just thinking about, oh, this was great for students, but why was it great for students? So after completing my master's courses, I think I really started to concentrate on some of those other subjects of, you know, especially in technology, why are these practices working, and why are they not working in some environments? And then it brings me back to going back to the research of, is it the tool? Is it, the lack of experience on the teacher's part of understanding the integration of technology? So they start to really tie together the research practices that we're continually thinking about when we're going through these courses, trying to relate them to how much and how effective we can be in the classroom. Because I'm past that point, I think, now of just trying to be a good teacher. I want to make best practices a continual thing, whether it's when I'm teaching students or when I'm coaching teachers. I'm constantly reflecting on why did I choose that, and was it the best method?
Thank you very
Man,
much.
Amanda, you stole my thunder. I was trying to
I'm so
figure out.
sorry.
No, it's okay. You beat me to the punch. I was like, well, how do I describe this in like an effective way? But you pretty much did it. I don't know what else I can add on to it, but I think part of the transition from being a classroom teacher to being a classroom teacher and a developing researcher is the shift to focusing on things with more scrutiny. For example, if we tried out a new technology, let's just say smart boards, because that just comes to mind. Oh, when I use smart boards with my students, I noticed that achievement in math and chemistry increased. Well, what was it? Was it the actual additional visual technology where students could see things more effectively that contributed to the difference in their performance on their tests and mastery of the content? Or was it that they were afforded more opportunities to interact with the technology coming up, being able to draw? So was there a kinesthetic learning opportunity that was taking place? And in the past, as just like a classroom teacher, and this isn't to make any sort of like discriminatory statement, but I personally didn't really focus on the why. I just noticed there was an outcome that was great. But now as a researcher, I look at those outcomes with more scrutiny and really try to nitpick and figure out what was the true cause behind the improvement that I saw in students' learning.
Thank you all so much. I think, if we're stealing each other's thunder, I think it's a good sign that we've got some people who think in the same way, and we've got some stellar people lined up for this webinar. So thank you all so much for talking about this. I think this subject, talking about the way that there may or may not be a gap between research and practice when it comes to education, I think that's really important for framing what we're hoping in the MAET program to accomplish with outreach. But I'm not the best person here to talk about that. That's actually Mary, who's in charge of outreach for the whole program. But Mary, you're not only currently in charge of outreach, but you've been an elementary teacher, you've been an MAET student, you're a graduate of MAET, and now you're working for MAET. I'm wondering if you can leverage all of these different perspectives you have to talk about how in the past MAET outreach has helped you as a classroom teacher.
Sure. So when I first decided to look at master's degree programs, I was looking for something that was maybe a little bit different than my undergrad experience, in that I did go to Michigan State for my undergrad and I had great education, but when I was in a classroom with 300 people and didn't know the instructor at all, and didn't, if I called, I would wait on hold for an hour and then be transferred somewhere else. Now this was back in the day. I'm not sure if this still happens or not, but when I actually called the MAT program, somebody answered the phone. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And then they answered my questions. And then they got back to me on email. And it was like a real person. It wasn't like a college person. And to me, it's the people being real in the program. Like Lee is fantastic. Lee Graves-Wolf, fantastic advisor, director of the program previously. She works for the Hub now at Michigan State. I think the most important thing for her when I was a student and all throughout is the relationships that she developed with students. And that's not any different than what I was doing as an elementary school teacher. Learning, you know, it does, I mean,
Oh no.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. When you have those relationships, I mean, you make people feel part of the team. We're Team MAET. You know, people will want to participate. They feel good about themselves. They feel good about what they're taking part in. And I think that is, I mean, there's all sorts of ways we outreach on Twitter, Facebook, all of these other ways, but it's really the people-to-people contact, I think, that makes our program different.
Thank you so much. So, Amanda, you're also a recent graduate of the MET program. I'm wondering if you can add to what Mary has talked about. What's helped you? What have you seen as strengths to the MET outreach as you've been a student and now that you're a graduate?
Well, I do have to concur that the top reason that outreach is effective is because I feel like I can definitely connect to any instructor, classmate, even the doctoral students are involved in a lot of the processes that we go through in our master's program. And I feel like if I haven't met them in person or I haven't been on campus with them and just online, I've still had a lot of interaction with these practitioners. And I feel comfortable in reaching out to them, either asking another colleague for their email or, you know, on my PLN and Twitter, I could ask them a question. I could grow my practice that way, which, you know, when you get to a certain point in your master's and past that, you think, okay, well what's next? Am I here? Am I done? But we know there's always more to learn, and if you want to grow and shape yourself, you're going to reach out to those. I think another essential thing about that program is the interconnectedness that they have with other universities, labs, the very hands-on experiences that their outreach program brings in. So we did a lot of off-campus site tours when you're on campus. Online, they even brought in other instructors from other classes and talked about, you know, their practices and utilizing, you know, things like that that are kind of outside of what we're doing, but we're growing our practice so that we can start to think about our own mindsets when we're using technology. So bringing in multiple experiences is a huge outreach. I mean, of course, the overseas program is a great connected outreach because you're connecting with practitioners all around the world in another university and their instructors. And then I also think the social media, absolutely. I feel like MAT tries to keep their alumni connected, and that's a very valuable piece to my resource list, to my growth, to my understanding of where my practice is going next, or maybe it's just a simple question about an intervention that I'm wanting to do with a student, and I can reach out to somebody and do that. So that part of their outreach, they might tweet out something from their alumni and connect you to one of their undergrads. So it's very nice. It flows very well. It seems authentic and very holistic.
Well, thank you for your thoughts. So, Ming, you don't have quite the history with the MAT program that our other two guests do, but I'm wondering, so I'm going to give you sort of a choose your own adventure here. Either are there any questions that you'd like to ask these people that are more familiar with the program, or alternatively, could you tell us some about the sort of outreach that you looked for when you were a teacher?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with option one. I do have a question for both Amanda and Mary. A big part of my experience as a teacher in a blended school was not just teaching students to be effective with technology, but also preparing them with 21st century skills or global survival skills described by Dr. Tony Wagner, because technology is always changing, but there are a certain set of skills that are pretty much timeless, and as long as you have them, you are able to adapt to whatever challenges you'll face in school or outside of school. So I'm curious, how much exposure or what kinds of exposure do students in the MAET program have with integrating educational technology as well as these 21st century or global survival skills?
Well, I mean, I'm very fresh out of it, so I can say definitely that it is a huge focus when you're talking about Wagner skills of collaboration and you know, connectedness and using your resources and being flexible. Those are all things that that program has been very good at doing because, I mean, we might have a day where we have an agenda and it's a quick fire. That's an example where they're just making you think on your feet. And you have to have that flexible mentality to know that maybe they're going to limit your resources. Maybe they're going to say, well, you can't use this, you can't use Hangouts for, you know, connecting to your webinar tonight. And so that makes me, you know, reach outside. It makes me think outside of my toolbox. Good search skills, you know, I have to go out there and just find it. I have to endure. And so those are all part of those, you know, global skills that we're looking for, not only for our master's students to have, but every student.
And I would just like to add to that. I graduated in 2013, but I was in the program from 2009 to 2013. So we started out with like creating websites on front page and uploading them to AFS space, which what does that mean, right? All the way through to iPads and things like that. And as the technology changed, I mean, I was learning a lot about the technology for sure. But it was really, what I really liked about the program is that it wasn't totally tech focused. So for instance, I had a parent contact me just online, a parent, I don't know this person at all, got an email and said, hey, I'd love for you to add, my daughter and I are looking at your website, would love for you to add this website to your list of resources because we think it would really help. And I'm like, what website is she talking about? It was a website I made in like 2010 on the water cycle for second grade, and at this point I was teaching third grade in a different school, and there is actually no way I could update that website. There's no way. I don't have the program anymore. I wouldn't remember how to upload to the AFS space. But the cool thing about that whole situation was, even though the technology has changed, the teaching, the good teaching was still there. And that's what I think this program does a really good job of, is no matter when you get your degree, you're learning these skills so that you can apply and be motivated to learn about new technologies, but you can apply whatever technology is available that day to whatever content you're needing to teach.
Wow. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Amanda.
Absolutely.
So Ming, I think you've done a good job of, so far we've talked about how do we communicate between research and practice, and then Amanda and Mary, you were talking some about the strength of relationships, the way that they can play into that, and Ming's sort of helping us combine the two together. So do you feel, and this is a question open for everybody, but do you feel that that bridge between research and practice happens more naturally when there are the sort of relationships that we've been talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, because I mean, before, maybe early on in the teaching career, it doesn't happen because you're, I hate to say surviving, but you're learning your best practices. You're learning classroom management. You're learning your content area. All those things that we talk about. You're building that knowledge base, and then that's fine. That's what you should be doing, and that's where we all start. But it's the same thing when you get into building from your master's to to the research areas of it. Is that you do start to put it into your practice. You start to bring it into your mindset a lot more. And it does start to bridge that gap when I can have a familiar context of people to relate to that person, so that their research or what their findings are, I find valuable because I hold that I have a connection with them that they have with someone else, and so they're reliable.
And I'm coming from, I taught in East Lansing, which is just right across the street from Michigan State, and had lots of juniors and seniors and interns and everything in the building. But one thing that was lacking was we really didn't have a whole lot of partnerships with researchers or graduate level people, even though we were teaching their children at our school. And I always reached out to, people at MSU. I'm like, if you ever need to, just not try something, but like, if you ever want to come in and just see what we're doing, like, please just come over. I would love to have you come over. I'm used to being watched all day anyway, so it's not to have somebody else in the room. And I think just from now being at Michigan State, there's this idea, possibly, maybe not with everybody, but I've noticed that people think that they're putting other people out, like the researchers might be putting the teachers out by going into the classroom, or maybe not welcome. And I really think the opposite is true in most cases. And just reaching out, and if they need somebody, I'm on all sorts of fellowships. I would love to connect teachers to researchers, and I'm sure Amanda, I see a big smile on her face. I bet she would too.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in a fellowship right now. It's called the Michigan Educators Voice Fellowship, and it's basically giving teachers a voice within the legislature. So talking to policymakers and things like that because of the same type of thing. And it's been a really, really valuable thing. And one of the things that we're learning from that is to build a relationship with the legislator. They can trust you, your judgment, come to you when they're looking for other teachers to talk to. I would say the same thing is true with the researchers and practitioners.
Excellent. Mary, I think it was I'm remembering a conversation that we had a couple of months ago where I don't remember exactly how you said it, and maybe this wasn't even you, so feel free to disown what I'm about to say, but something like when it was either when you joined MAET, either as a student or now as a full-time employee, you had this sort of realization that the researchers writing these papers were real people, and not just these faceless entities that were spewing out text for teachers to read.
Absolutely. No, and it's funny because last summer I taught the hybrid, 2 weeks on campus, 4 weeks online. And when the students were on campus, I had them all, I of course had to make my classroom, put plants and all that kind of stuff in it. Right. I'm from an elementary school. And I had all the students help me bring everything back up to my office. And when we did, Matt Kaler walked around the corner, and I was like, "Oh, everybody, this is Matt Kaler." And you should have saw their faces, like starstruck. Oh my goodness, he's T-Pack. Oh my gosh! And I was like, "Oh yeah, his office is like right. I'm sorry, like I thought you said that." So it's not just me. I think when you're studying like psychology theories when you were in your undergrad, those people died. A lot of them died a long time ago.
Right.
And so I think that's like, people are still holding on to that, and there are people out there right now doing all these great studies, and they're alive and well, and they work right down the hall.
That's a great way to put it.
That is great. So, Amanda, I'm going to ask you a question next. So we've been talking about relationships, the importance of building these relationships, and as you look to the future of MAET, you're clearly keeping up a relationship with the program even though you've graduated. Do you feel like there's a need for structured programs to build these sort of relationships, or do you think there are more informal ways that this could go? How do you see the future going? What do you think would be most useful for you?
Well, I do think there has to be a conscious intention, obviously, and so with that does come structure. You need, it helps to grow and have goals, and so in that case, yes, you do need some structured ways that you're looking at how we're going to keep one another connected to help grow each other's practices, but yet I still feel like there's a lot of the organic word of mouth, keep it going, share resources that just come out of having a space. It doesn't have to necessarily be a structured space, but just having an area to do that is really essential. And some of those, facets are Facebook and Twitter. I know that in the overseas cohort program, a valuable resource that I still use probably weekly, I might even say several times a week some weeks, is a Facebook page where, somebody will post something. It'll be directly related to something I was thinking about or working with a teacher on, and I can just go there and, for 5 minutes or 2 seconds, I can either read or I can post to it and ask questions, or I can just connect to it and say, well, I can get back to that later. But it gets push out there. People will share or they'll ask questions, and they're not necessarily seeking. They're sometimes just helping. We all have learned in this connectedness that the more minds, the better off our accomplishments and our innovation can be.
Thank you. And this reminds me, so Ming, in your introduction, we talked about social networking sites or something that you're looking into. And I've talked to you before about your interest in teachers' use of social networking sites. Do you have anything to comment or ask right here?
Well, I notice a lot in just what students say and what teachers say about their views about the role that social media and social networking can take in regard to education. And a lot of it has been kind of just marred with hesitance, like, oh, we don't do that with social media. That's not what you traditionally would use social media, use social media like Facebook like to do. It's more for socialization, hanging out with your friends, doing things in your regular life outside of work. And so I think part of it is just giving it a try and breaking the paradigm. For example, there was a study done by Rania Mustafa where they found that students who initially showed hesitation about using social media in the courses eventually developed a positive affect and perceived social media as being more valuable once they were exposed to it and shown how to use it effectively in the classroom. So if we want to take advantage of social media as a tool for developing professional relationships between researchers and teachers, and between students and all these other resources, we can't just say social media is bad, let's ban it from schools, let's not let anybody use it, let's block it with a firewall. But instead, I think it's worth taking a leap and just trying it. It won't hurt, or shouldn't at least.
Excellent, thank you. So, Mary, I know that MAET is using social media heavily already for some of its outreach. Could you tell us a little bit about that and maybe how you might see that expanding in the future based on what Ming and Amanda have said?
Sure. We do have a Facebook page. We also, I think personally, like the people who work for the program, we a lot of times post the things that we're doing on our personal pages too, and that's not, to inundate people with, ads or something like that. It's more, we're friends with teachers on Facebook, and so we're sharing some of the awesome things we're doing at MAET personally and professionally. Also, we've got, our hashtag MAET. It's a very active hashtag, and teachers and educators around the world use it to share information with each other and to connect. A lot of our alumni reach out on that hashtag with questions, and it's great because we can see them, forward them to people that we know, and I mean, it's basically, I'm not going to say it runs itself, but it could run itself because of people being so comfortable using it. Also, the hashtag for the courses, it's nice because some of the people, like in the past, so CP811, which is our course that focuses on the maker movement, previous students will still share maker stuff to that hashtag. So they are educating the students who are coming through now, which is just a really cool thing that you would have never seen before without that hashtag available. We also have Instagram that we are in the infant stages of using, definitely on our radar, but since our team is new, we are deciding that Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn, things like that aren't really already established, they will be goals for the future, but we really need to get good at what we're doing with our outreach for our alumni and our current students right now with what we have first. And then we're going to plan on definitely building those up. And maybe we'll learn from our students, who are really, we have a lot of students who are very successful using social media, and I'm sure we could learn a lot from them too.
Thank you.
Mary, You mentioned Snapchat. I know you guys said you're still early in the development, but are there any pieces of information that you could put out as like a teaser for applications of Snapchat?
Um, Honestly, we've talked a little bit about it, and it's funny because we are the ed tech people, but at the same time, when it comes to Snapchat, there is something that just we're a little more hesitant to use. Although I will say I'm like way more sold. I saw students in the library using it the other day to advertise a maker fair that they were doing in the library, and they were just
Hmm.
basically recording these little short commercials for it and sending it out, snapping it out or whatever. And it was they obviously had a really big
Mm.
following. I mean, we know it's important, and you know, I think the great thing about the way we teach too is that's something or this summer coming up when I'm teaching the hybrid. I'm going to put that as a goal for myself, not just the students, but for myself. Like, let's start using this. People are on it. We need to be on it also, and let's figure out how we can use this for education.
Cool. Thanks, Mary. I dig it. It sounds very interesting.
Coming soon.
Coming soon to a smartphone near you.
Right.
Cue music.
All you need is the trailer.
Yep, yep. So I'd like to move on to the next question, but Mary, you mentioned the MAET hashtag, and I don't know if I've ever told you my favorite thing about the MAET hashtag, but I love this. So I follow it because, like Mary said, this is very, very active, and one of the things that I've learned while following it is that MAET doesn't just stand for Master of Arts in Educational Technology. That's also how you spell the Danish word for full. So if you follow this hashtag, you get a lot of educational technology advice, but every once in a while, you get a tweet from Scandinavia from someone who's just eaten way too much food. So,
That is hilarious.
yes. So come for the ed tech outreach, but stay for the Scandinavian food tweeting.
Perfect.
That must be those late night tweets I'm not up for.
It must be. It must be. So we talked about social media as a possible, well, as a strength already of the MAET program, something that's existing and something that has the potential to expand even more. But I'm curious, and this is a question I'd like to open up for everybody. So we've been doing this webinar series. I introduced this particular webinar by saying that we're looking at other options. Do you think that social media is capable of doing in the future what webinars are doing now? Are there strengths or weaknesses to that approach? Is this a route that we could take to increasing our outreach in structured ways, as Amanda said, but still keeping it a little bit organic and maybe meeting, as Mary said, meeting teachers where they are? Or is this a pipe dream and you're always going to need some more formal meetings to accomplish the sort of outreach that we're looking for?
I don't think it's a pipe dream. The numbers speak for themselves. When you have over 90% of like teenagers and young adults using Facebook, and then like 2/3 of adults, people older than young adults, also using Facebook, even if it's a small percent of the audience that exists out there are the ones that you actually engage, that's still a sizable number. So the sheer fact that you have this potential audience to communicate with, interact with, is something you can't ignore.
And we've talked about this in meetings with EPET students and MAT, and, you know, is a webinar the best way to connect researchers and teachers? Or is there something else out there? Definitely social media can help, but, you know, when you're on Twitter, you're limited with the 140 characters. You can definitely connect with somebody else, but is it as deep as what you're wanting to do? So knowing that we definitely know that there is an issue and teachers want the research and researchers want to talk to the teachers, we do need to think, I mean, is it a podcast? Is it, you know, a different type of Facebook page? Is it, I guess maybe Amanda has some good ideas about that, and hopefully people on Twitter do too, because we would love to hear, you know, where can we go so that we can make sure that, you know, our audience is getting what they want in the format that they want.
Mary brings up a good point. I think that these are all valuable tools, and the social media tool I think I have even really evolved in, because I would never open up my Facebook pre-MAET to outside of my family network and my close friends. But you know, my thinking has evolved in it, and I've grown in understanding my own social media's implications and footprints. I mean, we all do. I'm still feel like I'm young in the profession in that way. I'm still understanding that, you know, yeah, I've got to think about some of the things that I'm doing, even if it's a personal thought. But the outreach programs that I foresee you continuing with are those more personal one-on-ones. And Mary and I were talking a little bit about this. And my thought process is I would love to have a practitioner come in. I would love to have another MAET student that's working on it come in and work with me in my programs. We're all over the world. When I travel, I will quite often reach out to any one of my MAT colleagues, and we'll meet up. And yes, we meet up socially as friends now, but most of the time we're talking shop and business and how we can grow and what our practices are and what's helpful and what have we been doing that's successful and what do we hear in the new realm of what's going on. So I think meetups, you know, those are great. Those are always, you know, one-on-one, the most personal, and you can do that and foster that through social medias. I mean, we've had meetups before as just teachers. Bike, you know, we'll get together and exercise. You know, there's lots of 5Ks, and I think the Nerd Camp is coming up, and they've incorporated a run in theirs, and it's just a way for us all to really meet together and still facilitate those conversations. But become more personal and know each other and be connected in that way so that we feel the strength in reaching out to one another or colleagues of those, you know, MAT graduates. So I foresee maybe some hands-on practitioners in the classroom, outreach programs, whether it be for the class or outside the classroom when you graduate. You know, I went to McCall last March or this March and got a lot of resources, and I'm hoping that she'll come in and work with me now. You know, the things that I've picked up from her, and I wouldn't mind doing the same.
Fantastic. So Amanda, to pick up some language that you were using earlier, it sounds like MAET outreach shouldn't just be coming from the MAET instructors, but MAET should also be providing a space in which, you know, you and your colleagues, your fellow grads, your fellow students can be helping out each other. Do I hear that right?
Yeah, I think I threw out a couple months ago that we have regional, you know, areas where we can meet, so that whether it's in California, because I mean I've seen a lot of graduates over there, and locally, I mean the other school has a lot of great tech people that I connect with when I go over on that side of town, and they wouldn't mind combining those things, and I think that's just a very natural progression of connecting and
Did we lose Amanda?
oh, am I? Can you hear me
you're
still?
back. You're back. Okay.
Okay.
You'd mentioned having a low battery before we started, so we were afraid.
I did. It might be going. I might transfer over here for the last 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, we might as well. I think we've had a lot of great ideas here, but to save Amanda the trouble of switching devices mid-webinar, we can just wrap it up now with one last question that I'd like to ask everybody. But so Amanda's already hinted at this, but Mary and Ming, if you can think about your past, present, and future as classroom teachers, what sort of outreach would you be looking for? And what sort of vessels, what sort of media would you do you think would be most effective for that?
I'm just going to jump on the social media bandwagon once again. I don't think it's a replacement for anything, but I think it is a tool that should be capitalized upon, if that's the right use of grammar. Just because of the affordances related to accessibility. We have, as teachers and just human beings, thoughts. And if we don't always write them down or share them with someone, they can get lost in all the other many thoughts that we have. So as researchers, if you come up with an idea and you want some feedback, rather than having to organize a very formal setting like a webinar to discuss or to have a meeting, you just throw that out there into the hyperspace of other researchers, other teachers, and say, hey guys, I just had this idea. What do you guys think? And you can get feedback from people who are very local to you, teach in the same school as you, do research in the same institution as you, or you can get a researcher from the other side of the planet, a teacher from the other side of the planet, and they can offer their perspective. And I think that would be an awesome resource.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, too, one thing that I've really been into recently is I just like to listen to things in the car. And on my way to work every day and home, I'm on Voxer and I'm listening to the groups that I'm in, and that's an easy way for me to keep contact with the teaching world too, and know what is happening on a day-to-day basis, not just in not just in the news, but also really in people's classroom. And so since I'm listening in the car, I'm either a podcast of some sort or maybe a Voxer group. I don't know. Sometimes those can get a little out of control with how many there are. But if there's the expectation that you don't have to listen to every single one, that's, I don't know. I think that's something that interests me. I'm on Twitter and I'm doing all that too. But during that downtime when I'm just driving, I like to learn too. And if I could have a researcher and a teacher talking to each other and almost translating the information between each other, I just think that'd be super cool.
Well, thank you all so much. Amanda, do you have anything that you've already shared so much with us? I don't want to put pressure on you to say any more, but if you have any other gems to share with us, I'd love to hear them.
You know what? I think that all of our thoughts are pretty much in the same direction. So whichever vehicle we use, it's just keeping the momentum going. So I think that's the essential part of it. Fantastic. And thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you, and thank all three of you. Like me, I'm questioning my own grammar here, but thank you all for coming to this webinar. This has been a wonderful opportunity, and I know that Sarah and Rohit and I and Mary and everyone at MAET will really be thinking about this as we move forward to do what Amanda suggested and keep up the momentum to create some spaces and to leverage what we have to be able to bridge these gaps that exist and bridge these different communities and bridge the expertise that exist between different teachers and different groups. Thank you all so much. We're excited to take these ideas to run with them. And if you're listening to this live, or even if you're listening to this as a recording, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to get in touch with us. We've mentioned the MAET hashtag several times, and there are plenty of other ways to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and we're very excited to be reaching out. So once again, thank you, Ming. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you all who have been listening and participating. We're eager to keep this conversation going.